As you guys can see, it's been raining the past couple days. It's actually kind of nice. The only thing that sucks though is I'm gonna have to remow all this grass. As you can see, it grew back pretty quickly. I have to do this probably. Jeez, I can't believe how fast it grew back. So I got all that over there. And it's come back. These weeds, they come back really quickly. Thankfully, this stuff isn't coming back too fast at all. I need to get one of those mowers with those side ports on it instead of, you know, the bag type ones. That would be perfect for out here. That or a ride-on tractor, which I have been looking for one of those on Craigslist, and I have not been able to find one that's in decent shape that actually, you know, works and still has the cutting deck on it for less than like 500 bucks. I don't know if I want to spend 500 bucks on one because I know they're not worth that much, especially when they're 10 or 15 years old. Of course, I could be wrong about that. But then again, my Craigslist vehicles and everything that people put on it are way overpriced anyways for some reason. But anyways, so as you guys can see, I did get rid of the Nissan. I did make a profit on it. Wasn't quite as much as I hoped, but in all honesty, I'm comfortable with how much I made considering the circumstances. It's a bit of a long story, but I am glad to get it out of either driveway, to be honest. I knew that thing was going to eventually become a money pit just based on the way it was taken care of. I had reason to believe that it was burning a little bit of oil, which seems to have been a common problem with those motors. Long story short, I'm happy to get rid of that thing. That thing was a maintenance pig. Nice car. Drove good. But in all honesty, I would never spend the money on one of those. Just maintaining them it's not exactly cheap, and you know, I know it sounds like I'm trying to rationalize it, but in all honesty, this car is a hell of a lot cheaper and easier to maintain, even though it doesn't look as good or perform as well as that Nissan did. But the truck hasn't been driven here in a while. I usually try and drive it on the weekends just because it, you know, it doesn't get as good a gas mileage as the Malibu does. So what I'm going to do today is I have a JVC stereo in that car, came with it, and then I have a JVC stereo in this truck, and this one's actually better. I actually have the remote for it because I bought this one and put it in this truck actually. But what I'm going to end up doing is swapping this stereo into the Malibu and vice versa. And since the JVC decks, both of them, I don't have to rewire anything. I just, you know, pop out the little plug in the back with all the, you know, wiring harness, pop it into the new one. So that's what I'm going to do. Thankfully, it's pretty easy to, you know, get the stereos out of both cars. In fact, the Ranger's just a little bit harder because there's a couple, I believe there's a couple screws. Yeah, they're underneath the ashtray. There's like two to four screws in here. I can't remember how many. And by the way, I just had the AC fixed in this car. Probably spent way too much money on that, but I plan on keeping this car at least, you know, till summer's over. Probably even longer, to be honest. I might just drive this thing till it blows up at this point. I mean, it's been a good car. I won't deny that. So what I'm going to do now is just let the Ranger warm up and get stuff ready to disconnect the stereos. This thing I tried to clean up a little bit. It was working perfectly when I got it, but I left it out in the rain and it didn't even have the little top for the motor, and water got inside of it. So I did my best to clean everything out and shook all the water out last weekend, but I don't know if everything got out, or, you know, I don't know if there's any damage done to it. But I tried plugging it in last weekend and it just, you know, made the whirring noise. So it didn't want to do anything. I'll have to see how to deal with that. Yeah, this thing is, it's toast. Hear that? So I'm just going to pitch this in the trash. It's done for. So now about a half hour later, I have the stereo from the Malibu properly installed. Bolted up just like I thought it would, or connected just as I thought it would anyways. I always forgot how difficult these trim panels can be sometimes. I mean, it could be a lot harder, but no, this is the whole reason why I went ahead and did this. It's because of these little flash drives. It's the whole reason. So that's what I'm doing with that. And now, of course, a little remote. Turn that down before YouTube nails me with copyright again. So now that that's done, now again, Decoder, you were asking me about what I was doing with the switch issue on my dash cam. And as you can see, this is where I have it mounted, just behind the rear view mirror. Put it there because that's really the best place to put it, both in terms of functionality and it's not exactly in your way when you're driving and, you know, looking through the windshield. The cable routed, it's taped there, but it's going through the top of the headliner, through the side right there on the A-pillar, and it comes down, goes over the top of the visor here for the instrument cluster, then comes out right here. It goes around the steering wheel and through the bottom like that. And then anytime I want to use this thing, I just have to manually insert that. Buddy turns on. And as you can see, it automatically starts recording whatever's in front of it. So it works. You just kind of have to remember to, you know, plug it in when you get in the car. Because as you can see, the car is, you know, it's off. But both these auxiliary jacks have power going to them at all times. The Ranger is not like that at all. The Nissan wasn't like that. It's just this car that I have that does this. So one way around that, what I'm probably going to end up doing is wiring in. I have a spare auxiliary power pack in the shop over there that I haven't used. And what I'm probably going to do is wire that thing into the ignition switch or the radio circuit, or possibly, if I can, into the fuse box, directly into it. So when the car turns on, that circuit turns on, and when it turns off, it switches off. Because this automatically starts recording when it gets power to it. It turns on, starts recording, and when you take the power off, gives it a couple seconds, and it shuts off automatically. Honestly, I've been happy with this little thing so far, but what the real test for it's going to be, thing that worries me about having one, is the fact that during the summer it gets hot as hell here. I mean, we're talking, you know, triple digits for almost the entire month, or almost the entire summer. So that's going to be the real test for this thing. I am going to review it here pretty soon, but I will update probably when summer is done, and let you guys know how it handled the heat, because that's really the only thing that worries me. So it's enough rambling for this. I do have a couple other things I need to do today, so now I'm kind of halfway into pulling this thing off. I'm going to actually have to remove this side bar over here. Now, part of the reason why I haven't really, dove into this thing too much, other than just diagnosing what it needs me to go into further, so to speak, is it's not getting any spark. The compression on is good. I know I'm going to have to pull the carburetor off, the air hat, and I know I'm going to have to clean out the gas tank, but that's not my problem now. I would have done that already had I didn't have this other issue, and that's that we're not getting spark. Now, in these old style magnetos, sometimes the points can rust up, or if there's debris in the way, that can cause a problem too. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and see if I can remove this bar here. trying to figure out the best way to do this because it's kind of in the way. I can't pull the engine cover off. Now theoretically I could pull the motor off of the body, which I might just go ahead and do that. Oddly enough, that might be a little bit easier, so we'll see what happens. Be right back in a bit. So I undid all the bolts on the bottom. I'm just going to go ahead and pull the motor off the frame. Might have to adjust some things a little bit, namely with this throttle cable. Throttle cable's out. Let's go ahead and put the motor on top of the workbench, and we'll be on our way. I hate this shitty fucking toolbox, guys. I really fucking do. So now we can go ahead and pull the cover off. I have a feeling there's going to be a ton of shit in here. Oh yeah. Looks like there might possibly have been a mouse nest in here at some point. Definitely got some rust on it, that's for sure. So here's the mag. It looks a little rusty to say the least. Same with the bits here on the rotor. Don't want to do that too much. Yeah, it definitely has compression. What I'm going to do just to get that out of the way, so I'm just going to connect it back up to the carburetor. And then probably what I'm going to do next is try and pull this mag off. See if I can clean this thing out a little bit. It's definitely dirty. Back in a bit, guys. Well, so still no spark out of this thing. I was just up here trying to do it a couple times. I got all the rust off the sides of everything of the rotor, and that's what I'm going to call it anyways. And the bottom two prongs, the mags, I got the rust off those, and still doesn't want to give me any spark. I wouldn't be surprised if that magneto is bad, or, you know, I have no idea. All I know about this thing is it must have been sitting outside for a long time. So maybe water got into somewhere where it shouldn't be. But maybe I can find or acquire a used one somewhere that I know works. And maybe I can get this thing working again. This thing's going to, out of all of these things, it's probably going to be the one that I'm going to tackle here next. So now I'm going to tackle this thing. This is the old air filter. It's actually not too bad. It is the original air filter though. This thing's probably about 10 years old. Here's the new one. Now what I gotta do is pull the carburetor bowl. I'm gonna drain it out, see if anything comes out of it, pull the bowl off. And in order to even get to that, I've got to disconnect this little wire bundle right here. And let's see, I think I gotta disconnect something else around here. Maybe I can just kind of pull this thing and just let it hang or something. But it's not too difficult to remove. There's two nuts in here. And then we have this side mount right here, pull off. And I didn't see if there's anything else, but we'll see what happens. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this thing off and start working on the carb. So I did just have to pull the carburetor off. Really simple. Just these two things up here that go into the linkage. Really simple. And then the gas tube. So I got everything almost put back together. Just need to hook everything back up. And I cleaned it out really good. I took the bolt off here on the bottom, and sure enough, a whole bunch of old stale gas came out. So definitely before we go and start this thing, after I'm done with it, it's a good idea to clean that out. So I'm just going to throw everything back together here. I have a new spark plug, and I've got to put new oil into this thing as well. So we'll be getting there pretty quick. Also, I just got back from dumping all my oil. That's my container I use, and that thing was full all the way to just underneath the cap. Hadn't emptied it in a while, so I just went and took that in and emptied it. Don't really have too much else planned to do for today. This thing is probably going to be a next weekend job. tear into this some more and see if I can figure out what the part number is for that magneto. Maybe I can pick up another one, or locate one for cheap, hopefully. But I have no reason to believe that it could be anything any more complex than that. But I forgot to update you guys and show you guys this. I got it all serviced up with new oil, new filter, new spark plug, new air filter. Me and my dad put some gas in it. It's got about a quarter tank. The valve's already shut off, but my dad's going to try and run it at least once a month. And it runs pretty good. Had to, mess around with the choke there a little bit to get it to run properly. It's kind of like 3 or 4 different things you got to do, and I kept doing them in the wrong fashion. But anyways, we eventually got it started and running anyways, because right when I first pulled it, it ran, but like I said, we had to figure out what we were going to do. And then we hooked up the generator to the air compressor, and sure enough, it supplied enough power to the air compressor, and the air compressor was running up just fine. So probably when it starts getting a little warmer out here, probably come spring, me and my dad are going to take the pressure washer and pressure wash the tractor and really whatever else needs to be pressure washed around here. The generator, maybe my mowers if I still have them. But my dad bought this thing like brand new, and he's never used it. So yeah, and there's a junk battery that we haven't figured out what we're going to do with yet. But anyways, I think that's about it for this video. Really not too much else going on today that's, video worthy. I wiped this hard drive. My dad gave me this computer to, I don't know, do what with. But other than that, I forgot I left this out here. It's, I think it's about 65 degrees right now. But it's pretty nice out, actually. I brought my charger out just in case, and battery's got 13 minutes left. I think this battery was having the same issue that yours was, Ghetto Hillbilly 1. It was just too cold that one day that I tried to use it, and it zapped itself down really quick. And yeah, so it seems to be working fine now. It's definitely a tired battery. There's no way around that. It's pretty sure it's about time to replace the battery in this camera, buy a new one. Oh, and the mower situation, like I was talking about earlier, this mower works great, and honestly, out of all these 3 mowers, this is the one I would keep. Partially because nobody would want to buy it in this condition, even though it runs perfectly. But the problem is I need a side discharge one. And I toyed around with the idea of just, cutting a hole in so it could discharge it, but it would still get all clogged up back here regardless if this thing's open or not, especially if the grass is wet. So that's another thing I'm going to have to look into, is how much I really want to go about doing this. This thing, before I clip out, I got 6 minutes on this battery. This is probably going to be a next weekend job as well. I'm going to look into a couple things. There was some sort of pickup tube, oil breather tube or something that I was reading about online, that people were saying if that gets clogged, it could get oil into the exhaust, and I'm hoping that's what it is, because, a breather tube's a lot simpler to replace than possibly an exhaust valve or, piston rings or something. I have no idea why else it would be doing that. Shooting oil out of the exhaust and burning it. But anyway, so that's kind of what I'm going to be looking at with that. I did explore the idea of swapping that motor onto this deck, and I don't know if that'll work with the self-propelled feature, but what it does have is side discharge port, and it appears that the bolt pattern for the block might be the same as this one. Not sure about that, and don't quote me on it. It's something I'm going to have to do a little bit of research on. But if this motor is in fact screwed, that might be something I would look into doing as well, because it's not really going to cost me any money for a good beater mower for out here. So till next time, guys, you all stay classy, and guess I'll catch you all next weekend.